All right, we're here with Representative Ron Copeland from State Representative, and good to have you here, Ron, in our first little video interview. We've done this on the radio numerous times, but it's good to have you here.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you having me here, and I think this is a good way to get the information out to the citizens of what's going on in Jeff City and just to keep everybody informed. I think that's very important for me to do for the community. So.
Well, one of the things that obviously when people see the sessions, right now you're kind of halfway through the session, and they get a little bit interested. They hear tidbits of things that are going on out there, and I know that's one of the things that last time we were on, we talked about a number of different bills that have been introduced, and they were just being introduced. Well, now you have a little bit more, maybe a little detail to some of those, and maybe even some new bills that have been introduced that you might want to just touch on, Ron.
Yeah, I've got a few here that we can talk about, and I think I gave you a list earlier about some things that we did do this past session that's actually moving forward. There's many more bills that's coming up. I know that the speakers told me that some of my bills are going to be referred after spring break, and them bills will be referred, but they wanted to put some priority bills that they had, and some of these major bills we'll talk about here today are some of the bills we got to the Senate are the ones going through the Senate.
So some of the bills, and I know we talked about a number of different things, and I think people have heard about this on news, a lot of statewide news, and one of those is promoting school choice, and it's even on a couple of commercials out there where you get a chance to choose whatever school you would like to go to, and there's good and bad to everything. Every bill that goes up to there's good and bad to it, right?
I think they're all lawyer bills because no matter what we pass, the lawyer's going to do something on each side. That's not a slam of any form or fashion, but there's always opposition and approval for both. But yes, the school choice bill was one of the big bills that's went through the House. That was House Bill 253. It actually did pass the House. I actually voted no on that to send it for perfection, and I was absent on the final vote. But the absent vote is actually a no vote. Just want to make sure clear that. Okay. I feel that there's school choice has a place in Missouri. I just didn't feel the bill that was put forward benefited our district. I think our rural schools do a really good job educating and keeping track of things that we need to do. I think DESE sends down rules and mandate rules from our rural educators that don't necessarily fit our education system. But if you look at open enrollment, and that's what it consists of, it's an open enrollment bill. You're going to be allowed to pick and choose a school, that you want to go to, and the state portion will follow that child. So the local school district won't get the state portion. Now the local district keeps their local funding, but they wouldn't get the funding from the state for that. Some of the issues I feel that when it went through the floor, only they predicted only 3% of students would benefit from this new law, right?
Right.
For open enrollment for choice, but 97% have to deal with what was left. I just felt that was a misproportion for choice, and I believe there's a place for choice, but I think we need to make sure it doesn't affect the people that are left in the schools or takes funding from them. And also that bill had an $80 million budget item for transportation costs, because if you're in low and reduced lunch status, the state would reimburse the parents for the transportation costs. So now we're taking $80 million from our schools to transport for choice, for your choice. So that I felt there was a better way to spend that $80 million and fix the problem instead of just allowing that. Now, it is an option. It's an option for the school districts to participate, and some may participate, some may not. My contention is if I'm not going to say a school district decides to opt in and take open enrollment students. I feel you're accepting more students into your school, right? So teachers are going to have more students in the classroom. So are they reducing the education level of the students that live in that district for the open enrollment choice? So it's one of those things is, where is that? If you accept that, that means you're getting more students. So, and we always push less children in the classrooms better. But an open
student-to-teacher ratio, you want to keep it as low as possible.
Yeah, so now we're going to have an open enrollment. We're going to put more students in the classroom. And is my student going to get less attention because there's more students in there? There's a lot of things you look at that I felt we could have done better.
So around with the obviously with the school funding formula the way it is and the average daily attendance what it is and based on student enrollment, if you start taking those students away from small rural schools, they're going to lose money if they decide they want to go to a larger school, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the key about this. But be honest with you, I know some teachers that taught in the urban areas, and they wouldn't send their kids to them schools because of the discipline and the disruption that kids cause. So that's kind of where this open enrollment charter things come from. Is our rural schools do a good job, and how many people can drive 26 miles to Rolla from Salem to take their kid every day, in the morning and in the evening.
One way.
Well, that's one way. That's one way. So, I mean, it is going to, and then you look at the K-8s in the district, there's 71 K-8s in the state. Are they going to opt to go to the bigger school and take that money away from our K-8s? And I think our K-8s do a good job educating our kids. I mean, that I really do. Yeah, so.
But there's no final decision on that, is there?
Well, it's going to the Senate.
Yeah.
I mean, so it did pass the House 85,
Right.
And we only need 82 votes for it to go through. And that was last year. That went through the House last year too. It's just an ongoing thing year after year. We'll see what the Senate does if they put something in it. I think we need to fight for our rural schools, and I've told superintendents by both terms that I've been in, you need to bring representative stuff to advocate for our public schools. It seems like we're always being told no on charter, no on open enrollment, no on this, no on this. But give me something to say, hey, what do you need? What do I need to do as your representative to not just fight, but put something forward to make it better? I'd love to see 100% transportation cost for our schools.
Right.
And I look at this, and I've talked to several superintendents in the last week, is that we spend a lot of our funding on transportation because we have such a big area to pick up our kids. Urban areas don't have that transportation cost like we do.
Right.
So are we spending our transportation money on transportation when we should be spending that on educating our kids? I mean, but if they're not there, they can't be educated.
Sure.
But are we spending more money on transportation that we could be spending somewhere else if we get 100% transportation costs?
I think there's only 4 cities that have charter schools, and I
Yes.
think that's St. Louis, Kansas City, Columbia, and Springfield. I think those are the only 4. And there was just a charter school that failed in St. Louis, and which is the only one that has failed so far, but they had to close their doors. So when you start talking about these choices, that may not be as crystal clear as people may think in their head.
And it's obvious. I mean, there's one bucket that you got to take education out of in the
Right.
state. I mean, so how do we divide that up to make it fair? Talking to superintendents yesterday, the formula is so difficult to figure out why this person gets $10,000 per student from the state and this gets $3,000 or $2,000. I learned a lot yesterday talking to the local superintendents about local funding and state funding. I was under the assumption that we give $6,375 for every student in the state.
Nope.
That's not how it works.
No.
You have to take that and you take the local contributors and take that away from that. So it could be $2,000 the school gets, or $5,000 they get per student, depending on the contribution rate from the local taxes.
Much more to it than just simply saying it's
I learned a
just
lot.
want to give the kids a choice, right?
I learned a lot yesterday
Yeah,
about and our rural schools do a good job. I think you look at what we do, and I think that the testing is not the best it can be. They just got a generic test and they say this is what you got to meet. That doesn't mean we got 4 K-8s in the district, and our 80. If you look at, and being on the school board in the past, we did look at this. We looked at the scores, the MAP testing scores, and some scores go really high. Some schools scores really high, but you take them kids from our K-8s from Salem. I'm not bashing on any of them, but you put them in our 80, and in 9th and 10th grade, you look at their testing scores. The scores from the rural schools aren't comparable to what they are in 9th and 10th grade. So, them test scores are kind of deceptive. Because if one rural school has in the 90s and you put them in 9th and 10th grade with all the other rural schools, they're not in the 90s anymore. And I'm not bashing, but I think they just do a better job. I'm not saying teaching the test, but that's not a good way to determine the knowledge of the student. You get a student that's second grade level reading in fourth grade, and they bring them up to fourth grade. They have done the teacher has done masterfully to bring them to fourth grade, but they don't get credit for that. They just get credit for, they're only reading at the fourth grade level when they go into fifth grade.
Yeah.
So I think that's the way it's graded is not the best for students as a whole, but it's just a way they do it. So I'd like to see that change, but we'll work on that.
We'll work on that. Okay, very good. One of the things that I think people have, and I've heard a lot more about in the last few years, is the violent crime in Kansas City and in St. Louis, and now even in Springfield. There's a much more violent crime, and I know the House has taken that up to talk about that as well.
Well, there are several bills in the House that's going through the House. There's 301, 702, 53. Most of them, the 301 addresses some crime, and I was on a subcommittee, not a subcommittee because we can't have committees out of session, but a study group. We had a study group over the summer, and there was 3 Democrats and 3 Republicans on this committee, and we come up with a solution of a bill to put forward to the House. And there were some good additions to help. One of them was to help St. Louis prosecutor. I mean, we were on the phone with the prosecutor. She called into the study group, and she said she needed help, right? And that's obvious with the amount of, I think there's 3,600 backlogs or more waiting things. So we were trying to provide help with her with 301 is saying if the crime rate exceeds this much, the governor can appoint a special prosecutor and help reduce that load on the prosecutor. Now, I think that's a fight. I'm not going to put words in her mouth, but I would take that in a heartbeat. I think she takes it as a taking her authority away. I would take it as it's helping people in the community. There's other few things added to that bill. There's a bail reform. We need bail reform on that. They release them with no bail. Like for instance, the girl that got her legs, volleyball player up there, that guy had how many chances, and they keep letting him out. At what point do you say, hey, you have to stay here until your punishment, or you've been convicted or not convicted,
or go to trial even.
And then the other one, there's a 702, and I got a companion bill that's on that. There's several officers or police or legislators that put that forward to take St. Louis Police Department back in the hands of the state control, and that's like Kansas City. I guess in 2013 or 12, the police department in St. Louis went back into local control. And there was a bunch of promises made, reduction in crime, a lot of things that were promised that would do. And for the last 10 years, nothing's been improved. It's been going backwards. So several legislators and they asked me to carry that bill because of my law enforcement experience. And that passed out of the House as well. We'll see where that goes, and it just puts the hands back into a commission that takes the politics out of police work. Because the mayor in St. Louis is more, they say, is defunding the police and putting money in social issues, which is a good thing to do if you have the extra money. But you can't reduce the police force and expect crime to go down. So that's a good bill there that I think. We'll see I think there's companion bills in the Senate. So it just seems like things are working a little bit better this session than the last session. We have companion bills in the Senate and the House that are similar, that can be tweaked, that maybe if we pass them, they go to conference and they come to so that, and I think that in and of itself will get morale in the police department in St. Louis better. And I think it'll reduce crime if they know the police are doing their job and there's people out there. So.
Always good to know that when you go to these places. A lot of people will go to Kansas City Royals games, Springfield Cardinal games, St. Louis Cardinal games. They want to feel safe when they go to those games. They're not used to violent crimes. You're coming out of a rural area, and it scares them. And a lot of people aren't going to some of those games because of that very reason.
And that's true. I didn't want to get into economics of it because I'm public safety in my career. But I mean, you got a lot of different things going on with crime in a city. St. Louis is a hub, and businesses come to St. Louis, and that provides economic growth to the state.
Sure.
If crime is so high, they go to other cities or other states. I mean, so it is a needed thing for the state to look at, because I do believe in local control. But when local control is affecting the whole state, when my citizens or constituents in Dent County don't want to go to the St. Louis ball game because of crime, is there something I can do to help do that? And that's kind of where I kind of got involved in that, and thought I'd use some of my law enforcement experience to say, I support this.
You do that, it helps statewide.
Yeah.
Not just your constituents, but everybody else's as
Yes.
well. Very good. One word I hate in politics is transparency. I think it's overused, and I think it's more like translucent than transparent. But nonetheless, there has been some question about ballot transparency. Can you kind of touch on that?
Well, from what I understand of this, and it did come through the House, is that sometimes you get these ballots and it's so confusing. Like Amendment 3 was, 30-something pages long.
Yeah.
How direct forward, if you vote for this is what it means. Sometimes you read it, do I vote yes to support it, or is it no, that I don't want it? So they're trying to make it where on the ballot it tells you, if you vote yes, this is what it means, right? If you vote no, this is what it means. Because right now that's not in there. You have to read it and interpret it, or I get 100 phone calls. What does this mean? Because they do call me when these are on the ballots. What does this mean? Is this how it's going to be? So they're trying to make that just more pretty simple, and it should be simple. If you vote yes on Amendment 3, we're going to have recreational marijuana, right? Or if we vote no, you're not. But sometimes if you vote no, that means it's going to happen, but they just want to make it transparent on what you're voting for.
See, one of the things that bothers me about some of those laws, like you said, 38 pages long, what else is involved in that they're not telling you on the ballot? Because how it affects law enforcement, where's the dollars going, are they appointing a special somebody here or somebody there to watch over this? Where's it going to fall under? Is it going to be under the Department of Economic Development, law enforcement? What's it going to be under? I mean, there's a lot of questions when you start talking about legalizing marijuana or legalizing anything, because all of a sudden these officers who've been enforcing the law for years, you got to change course.
Oh, it's
overnight.
It's amazing that the ads I was seeing for Amendment 3, and it passed. So but I will say it only passed in 13 counties in the state out of 114.
Right.
And I can lead into something later. We'll talk about our petition initiative and protecting our Constitution.
Well, why don't you just go into it right now, since you're already touching on it.
So that I don't want to take the voice away from people. I mean, there's some petition initiatives, and basically it's trying to fix where everybody has a voice in a constitutional ballot.
Right.
If 13 counties in the state out of 114 decided that we're going to have recreational marijuana, I don't think that is proportionately fair.
Not a majority of the
they had
area.
And it's kind of like your electoral college. Why do we have an electoral college for president? Because three cities could have enough votes to pass our presidential for the most votes. So I've been seeing this for the last 2 years on petition initiatives, that where they're passing these is in the metropolitan areas, and the rural areas are losing their vote on that, because that's just how it is. And I'm not opposed to that. There's a bill out there, the House, I think it's 43, House Joint Resolution 43. It's a 60% vote threshold. I think that's a little. I'm not going to say I don't support that. Yeah, I will. I'll say I don't. I voted yes for it because we need some reform, and I think that's going to some fixes. But there's some other HJRs out there coming out of the Senate that says one of them is 5 of the 8 congressional districts have to have 51% of the vote. So 5 congressional districts have to have 51% or more of the vote. So that means you're getting 5 congressional districts out of 8 that pass it, not just 13 counties. There's another one out there that I was talking about. Each representative district has to pass by, a percentage of them have to pass by that for your district. So it'd be Denton Crawford would have to have a percentage amount, and a proportion of them would have to, I think 2/3 or something would have to pass it. So it's just getting back to, instead of the number of votes, we're giving it, the whole state has to have a percentage amount. And I think that's needed because way I understand it, you can get $2 million, you can get most things on the ballot or get the signatures on the ballot.
Very much true.
And Amendment 3, it passed, so I'm going to represent. It passed. Let's do the best we can with that now. But it shouldn't be 38 pages, because the ads on the news were saying it's going to help the police and veterans, and it's very deceptive on how they advertise. And that's one thing that frustrates me about politics and the media as a whole. It's hard to watch either side of the news because it's opinionated. The facts. And that's one reason I'm here is I'll tell you how I voted. You may not like it. You may like it, but I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
I mean,
you're giving a background as to why.
And I'm not a career politician to do this forever, but it's very difficult up there to see how our government runs. It's just difficult, coming from a career in law enforcement and having ethics and morals and seeing how the government's run. It's frustrating, and I know it's frustrating to the citizens because they see it at what happens in Washington. Missouri's not as bad, but it's still hard to get good things for the citizens passed when there's groups that don't want it, that have an agenda.
There's great ad writers, like you were talking about some of these ads, that it seems that they misrepresent what's in the bill. It's just that the word choice that they use it's not for or against, and they leave that open. And when they do that, it's not saying that it's good, it's not saying it's bad, it's just saying it could benefit, or, they don't say it will benefit. And so, see, people, they don't hear the could or the will, they just think benefit, and they hear that word. So the benefit works in favor of people looking at that in a positive way. So again, a lot of it's word choice. Some of these ad writers are very good at what they do. Then there's other ones that you can pretty well tell off the structure of the bill if it's going to be any good or not. However, as you're saying, though, 38 pages, you can't put that in a 30-second ad. No matter what's in there.
And they use police. What do we always look? Police, education, or veterans. I mean, with all three things, and
or children.
Or children, yeah. I mean, so them are the four things that are pimped, or not. I don't want to say that word. That's maybe might be incorrect. Be incorrect by somebody. I don't mean that harshly in any way. So
you don't mean it in that term,
no,
right?
No. But it's. I just want to make sure you're an educated voter on things. I get things at the office all the time: vote no, vote yes, vote no, vote yes, vote no, because everybody's got an opinion. But then 9 times out of 10, when you talk to them about the whole bill, they don't understand the bill. They've just been told, hey, this is a bad bill because of this one issue. There may be other things in that. We're talking about, I just talked to you earlier about a bill that's got 103 pages. I cannot, and it was a 10-minute committee meeting. There's no way we can go over the 103 pages on that bill. So until I find more, I'm going to vote no on that, because how do you get a 10-minute committee meeting on 103 pages? There's not something in that bill's not being told, so.
I think a lot of that goes back to when Obamacare got passed. What was that, 5,000 pages? And it got passed in a day? I mean, seriously, come on. There's no way anybody could have read that thing.
And I think that's why people are discouraged or get disfranchised because of our government. They see a 5,000-page thing, and we should have a process. And the process seems that there's no way that can be read and what's in it. And I'm a true believer in words matter. I don't know if we discussed this in the past. One word makes a big difference in a statute: shall, may, and things like that.
We were just talking about that in an ad. Same thing.
So it goes right back to that. People need to look at the word. They can change one word in a 15-page bill, which changes the whole bill. So you got to be careful to read that. And when I started, people say, "How are you going to vote on a bill?" I says, if I don't know it, I'm going to vote present. I don't like voting present because I'm not going to say I'm not voting for or against, but why I don't want to vote against something that's good or vote for something that's bad. So I have voted present on bills that say, I don't understand this bill. I'm not going to go one way or another, because it could be a good bill that I vote no on, or vice versa. So, so I will have people say that you're a scapegoat. I don't think that's a scapegoat. I'm just want to learn more before I vote yes or no.
I don't want to support a bad bill.
Sometimes you push the button up there and you're thinking, you read it 2 or 3 times and this is how you understand it, but then that's not what it means. So it is frustrating to me as well when I read these bills, and I read a summary, and you read a summary and it's missing about half of what really is in the bill. Right. And we talk about words matter, just like a fetus or an unborn. Fetus isn't as personal as a child, when you get into that realm there. So, I believe we use the word unborn or child, in the womb. And that's how I feel. Because it's not a fetus, but it's not as personal if you use the word fetus.
Right. I know.
So
it becomes an object, not a person.
That's why words do matter on things like that.
Sure.
So.
Well, a lot of words matter too, and a lot of people. I know, Ron, a little bit of Obamacare and things of that nature. Going back to that, not to reference that for everything that goes on, but a lot of life-saving exams were supposedly going to be covered for a lot of different people. You know, that hey, if you want to get a mammogram, if you
Yeah.
want to get a prostate test, whatever for guys, these should all be covered. And many of them, they are not.
Well,
And people
yeah.
are being charged outlandish amounts to go get a mammogram.
Yeah, and there was a bill that come through the House. I think we talked about this. It's House Bill 575 and 910, and it's where insurance can't charge you for a mammogram or life-saving
Or colonoscopy.
things like that.
Yeah.
You know, as far as that goes, I think that's a good cause because they're saving money really in the long run if they catch that early.
Sure.
You know, so my only concern on that is, are they going to do their amortization table and raise everybody else's rates to make up for that? You know, that's how that works.
I do know.
You know, but that shouldn't keep us from trying to help and save some of these ladies or men that have these exams that need them early.
Right. But again, that misrepresentation when we were told this is
Oh,
that
yeah.
all those tests, life-saving tests, would be covered by the government's insurance with Obamacare. There wouldn't be any charges. And that's not the case.
Yeah.
That did not happen.
And there's some other bills that was for medical equipment not to pay tax on, eyeglasses not to pay tax on. There's them kind of things trying to save people on necessary items, you know, like glasses or, you know, they had a diaper bill. Why should we be paying taxes on diapers when the, you know, mother needs that money for something else? I mean, if we can offset that, you know, that why not do that? That's not like a lifetime issue for a baby. You
Sure.
know? So them are bills that go through the House as well that I've seen that trying to save people money out here when they buy them necessity items.
Right. Last time we were together, you kind of touched on the property tax relief. A lot of people saw their personal property taxes skyrocket with reassessment, and they weren't really happy about that. And I do know the legislative body decided that a lot of those people said it was excessive in some areas. And you had talked a little bit about it last time we were on the air when you filled in for Mr. Skiles. You did touch on that a little bit. Do you have further information on
I know
that?
that's a continuing discussion, you know, all the time. You got 70-year or older, you know, being relieved of their tax burden on a house and so many acres, you know, after a certain age, you know, but we got to be careful we don't take a lot of it. We've already got commodities, or we live in this comfort level, right, because of the taxes that we bring in, and we've got used to that. So, you know, if we cut a bunch of property taxes and reduce that income, are we willing to give up some of our comforts that the county provides on that? So we got to be careful of what we reduce, and we don't reduce it so much that it affects things like everybody else in the community.
Schools,
Yeah, I mean,
services,
so,
et cetera, yeah.
but I think there is a push for, you know, at a certain age, you live on a fixed income, right? So why don't, and they pay taxes their whole life, and they've got their home, let them own their home after a certain age, you know. It couldn't be 5,000 acres, you know, they're a house and whatnot, not 5 houses, but things like that would be a possibility. They talked about 70, talked about 65, but, you know, you got to find the money to replace that and see what that's going to do for each county. We did do a vehicle tax relief thing that come through the House. And that's basically, I don't know if I talked about that last time, but you
Touched
know,
on it.
you know, they had 2 different versions on that. Basically, it's you know, after 15 years, you won't pay any personal property on a vehicle. It starts out, you know, the suggested retail value,
Sure.
and it goes down every year for 15 years. After 15 years, it gets taken away. Now, people might think that's crazy, but once it gets started, you know, it's going to rotate through the system, and it's going to wash out after a few years.
Sure.
Where it's not doesn't affect it. That's one way to give back, because that's one of the big things. You know, the assessed value on that come from a recommendation from Jeff City to the assessors. You know, and they had the option to take that recommendation or not. And I think there's going to be some relief given on our next tax burden, if I'm not mistaken, on the assessments from last year.
Yeah,
So
and-
I think there is some relief in that aspect because of the exorbitant taxes that were paid.
Yeah, and I think anybody that has a vehicle that's 18, 19 years old, you're only gonna pay $40, $50 personal property taxes.
Yeah, I mean,
anyway, it's not that big a deal anymore. First off, if you can even get it fixed, it does break down. But you know, I have an older vehicle and talked to another gentleman who has the same type of vehicle. I think $46 my personal property tax on that vehicle. Now, I remember when it was brand new, it was a lot higher, you know. But as you're mentioning, it gets amortized down, it's depreciated out. It doesn't have a lot of value.
And you know, that's
why,
true.
you
I mean,
know,
it's, and finally we get to own something maybe, right?
yeah. So if you own something for 15 years, that $46, yeah, if you add it all up, it's going to be maybe $100,000, $200,000, $300,000. I don't think it's going to affect the communities that much, because once it's off the rolls, it's off the rolls. That's $46.
Yeah, and people are going to buy new cars. I mean,
Eventually,
it's
yeah.
not. It's not going to like it's going to.
Or even if they buy a used car, it's going to have more value than that one
Yeah.
that's 20 years old.
Yep.
Yeah, very good. All right, very good. Now, there was one of the things that you had made mention also last time is protecting farmland. You know, in Missouri, we've had Chinese people, well, I'm not just going to say
Yeah.
Chinese. There have been foreign investments. I think the Chinese have been the latest one. I think a couple of ads really brought out that they were interested in buying a lot of Missouri farmland. And they have, by the way, what they can. So, but there's other foreign investments that would love to get part of our farmland, wouldn't there?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the National Security Act type issues, there's like I think 6 countries that are what I say hostile towards, that we feel is hostile towards us to invest in our property or our farmland, and them are the 6 that the bill covers. It's not just China. I mean, but there's 6 that in the national security issue that they have addressed as being hostile, and we don't want them owning property. And China's one of them. Russia's one of them. I think there's some Mideastern countries as well that they don't want own farmland, and that is something that we need to address. I think that's one of the minuscule things that we need to address, because you know, they'll go through an LLC, but it gives us a start to say somebody's responsible for looking into this,
Right.
and before they can buy it, this has to be done and checked off, and if they're fraudulent, I think we can go, the Attorney General can go back and take it, you know, things like that. The other thing that we talked about that goes right along with this farmland issue, and that's eminent domain. We need to protect ourselves. But there are countries that are friendly to us that want to come in and do things that would benefit us, that they don't restrict them 6 counties or countries, but there's still a restriction on amount. But the one thing when we talked about this farmland is we need to really look at our production that we produce here in the United States and who owns that. You know, our beef production, our pork production. If we need to even go farther than farmland, because if these foreign countries that are hostile to the United States start buying beef production plants and pork production plants and all these other plants that produce food, they could choke us out, just like what happened during COVID with all the chips and all the things like that.
Right.
So we need to be very careful of that, as well as the farmland. You know, the farmland's easy because it's easy to say, no, you can't do that. But, you know, if they're owning our beef processing, they control a lot of our food. If you can control the food, you can control a lot of things. So we got to think above just the land. The land's easy to think about, but you think about all the production and all the stuff that gets done with that. If they control that, they control the prices and whatnot. So that's the next step that we were talking about. How do we keep foreign companies from owning our production of food? I mean, it's we rely on oil, and what we see that when we rely on oil from other countries, how it fluctuates, and how we're at their discretion to do whatever.
You know, one of the things, and I'm not sure a lot of people even realize it, Ron, is if you start a company, there are limitations to foreign investment that the federal government has in place. Even the state government has some of those limitations on foreign ownership of a company in Missouri or even in the United States. But there is no restriction on who can buy the land for a lot of people. Anybody can come and buy land. So if you buy the land, own the land, you can kind of do what you want with it. That kind of opens up that door to those foreign companies coming in and saying, hey, we own the land. I can do whatever I want with the land. And you know what? I would find that very difficult for whether it be state or federal government, if they own enough land, if they want to start their own companies on those land. How are you going to stop them?
I don't know. We just got to be prepared to make sure we don't get our hands tied with so much foreign investment.
That's what I mean.
Yeah,
you know,
I mean,
but
so-
if you have that opening that they can buy the land and they own the land, if you've got 5 million acres and you own the land and you're told, well, you're a foreign investment, you can't do anything with it, you have no need to buy that land.
Yeah.
But if right now the kind of loophole is, we're going to limit your investment. What you can do as a business, you can only have so much foreign investment. You can only have so much foreign investment in the state. But it doesn't say you can't buy land.
Yeah. Well,
So
we're trying to restrict that on
I get it, but I mean that's what I'm trying to point out to people though, that some of those precautions have already been taken in business to try and limit that from happening. Like you're saying, have coming in, buying a processing plant, all of a sudden all the beef in this county of Missouri is going to go overseas.
Yeah.
None of it's going to stay here because they own the processing plant, and that's kind of the point I'm making. If they have the land and they own all the land, you can't stop them from doing that. So I think it's a real good idea to protect our farmland and keep it local control. And really, that's really what it's all about. You being a local representative is keeping it as local and in control as possible. Correct?
Yeah, that is. I mean, it's one of them things.
All right. Now, a little bit about one of the things I think people are hearing about, maybe even seeing out there, Ron, is the broadband development. We know that Mr. Tarksley is in charge of the broadband for economic development for the state of Missouri, and they are still doing some tests. They're still they've got right now through the University of Missouri Extension. You can get there's a survey you can take that tells the government, or actually this group, I shouldn't say the government because it's a separate group, what kind of internet you have, what you use it for, things of that nature, so they can help get that broadband in the areas. We're one of the areas that is really affected by this because we have so much national forest that they weren't able there's no way of putting towers in there. There's no way of running cable through there. You've got to go through all the red tape of the federal government. We know the Steelville telephone was trying to come down 19. They hit a snag at the Indian Trail,
I talked to them just the other day, and I can elaborate on that, too.
Yeah, and so, but these are all things we all want to get somewhere else, but there's a lot of barriers to some of this that we're trying to get through, and they're just natural barriers. It was set up to protect land. Sometimes it's protecting us from developing anything either, too.
Well, I mean, we can get right back into that. It is frustrating when you see something that's best for our citizens, and our government is holding that up.
Right.
For what reason? I mean, when does that outweigh the best interest of what we need to do? I mean, and that's frustrating to me. Their mission is this, but it should be what's the best mission? What is the best for our citizens? And this should come second in some ways, because how is that going to really affect that? Or some of our land. But talking about Steelville Telephone Exchange, they were in my office, and they've got funding to bring cable down there, and their plan is to honestly come down 19, go out 32 to Licking, and try to hook up, have actual cable through there.
Right.
I mean, but they got a snag, and which I'll tell you how they got that snag is they're dealing with the federal government in an issue to bring that cable down through here, and I don't know if it's the Indians or
Trail of Tears
issues, but they said there's another federal agent that has allowed another utility or another company to come right down through there, but they're dealing with the one that says no, or they're dealing with, so that's where our government doesn't talk with each other. If they've already been approved by another company to do something, but you got to go through this one and get denied or get prolonged. It's frustrating because we put all this money. The feds think it's a big thing because they're putting money into broadband, but then another federal agent stops it because of this. And I don't know why putting a cable under the ground on the right-of-way is an issue, because we've already got telephone lines and things right along through there. So, but that's something that's important. I mean, I think it gives us, that in and of itself allows home-based businesses to start up. I met a group out of Cape Girardeau that trains people to work at home for these big companies, so they don't have to drive to St. Louis. They can make $70,000-$80,000. I'm sharing that information with chambers and whatnot. Say, hey, there's just training with the schools, them kind of things. It's a coding type job. But,
right.
I mean, being up there, it's amazing how many people you meet and things that you see that that I'm learning every year. I mean, so.
Well, and how different areas, years ago, I think maybe around people might understand it better. Brown Shoe had a company here. You had other factories here. Berard's had a factory here. Berard's fed a lot of nightwear up to Famous Bar in St. Louis. A lot of that was shipped right there. Brown Shoes did the same thing, sending directly up to St. Louis. Those were manufactured here. Well, nowadays, we may not have the manufacturing that we used to, but we still have people who work from home or a small business that are satellite offices, and they could be anywhere with a good broadband. That could be anywhere in the
Oh, yeah.
state instead of having a the old brick and mortar. I kind of call it just the fiber optics type of deal. But when you have the brick and mortar, you've got a fixed asset. When you have that fiber optic deal, you can go from this office to the next office, and you can still communicate the whole way. It's a portable office that can benefit a lot of different people, but also benefit the citizen who wants to live in Dane County, who does not have to drive to St. Louis, fight the weather, fight the traffic, and depreciate their vehicles, waste a lot of gas money. And then, as well as I do, when the weather gets bad, you're taking a chance. It gets a little bit dangerous out there. You're a highway patrol officer, when people get tired, what happens when they start to, they start to drift. They get off I say kind of off their equilibrium because they're trying to drink coffee, they're trying to think what they got to do, and the next thing you know, somebody cuts them off. They're not right there. They're just not aware, as they should be, driving a vehicle. It happens all the time, or you see people nowadays texting and things of that nature, trying to answer a call for business while they're driving. And I'll give a lot of credit to. I love it when people pull over. I love it. Pull over, and they see them on their phone or doing this, then they get back on the road. But unfortunately, I've seen a lot of people trying to do business while still driving, and that's a little bit dangerous because you'll see them slow down, speed up, weave a little bit. You have to be totally aware on the highway. You know that as a highway patrol officer. And that's one of the things that when we talk about portable offices, that portable offices does not mean driving your vehicle.
I agree with that.
So I like a lot of the opportunities. I think people should go take that test. I think you can get to it from the extension website. I think there's a link to that. I think it's MUEXT. You can go to that and you can take that test. It takes about 5 minutes, but it does ask you some questions. Are you having issues with your internet? Do you need help with your internet? It's a really very simple survey.
Trying to find the unserviced areas, underserved areas. That's our issue. And I know from the past there was a lot of funding from the state given for these underserved areas, and a sticking point of mine is they were given all this money to serve them areas, and nobody else can serve them areas because of that. So hopefully we can change that to where if they haven't serviced them, it gets opened up for people that will. They got them up tied in a knot where this is our area, but they never serviced them. I feel there should have been some oversight on that, and if you're not going to serve the areas that you said you were, give us our money back. But that's state government. So
well, a lot of it was federal government too, and they gave money. I know to a couple different companies, and they put that money in another location. They got the money from Missouri and ended up going to Las Vegas.
Yeah, I'm just saying. So oversight is a big thing. One thing I'll say this is, I would love to see this. It's not going to happen this year, but by the time I'm there, I'd love to see that every state agency get an oversight committee, a legislative oversight committee. Right now we have an oversight committee. We got one oversight committee for all the state agencies. We got one budget we got some small appropriate budget forms, but I would love to see, we talk about oversight, making our government accountable. It's very difficult when there's one oversight committee for every state agency. I would like to see, this is the process because you got to think this through, and the Speaker and House and the Senate all have to agree, but I think that we should have an oversight on every state agency. They should go to a modified zero balance budget every year. Okay. And the reason for that is because every year, and our state agencies do a good job, mostly, I says, but when they get a $250 million budget, the next year they come in usually and ask for 260 and say these are our new programs. And the next year after that they might meet 265. So it always goes up, and costs go up.
Sure.
But we never go back and validate the $10 million they asked for 3 years ago, or do you still have them programs? Mm-hmm. So the modified zero balance budget would be, this is your base budget that you need for your employees, your vehicles, and your cars, or whatever, right? What other programs have you implemented that they're still in effect, that you're using that money for, or not? And it would just make it more accountable. They wouldn't spend all their money at the end of the year, buying all this stuff, or, that kind of thing. And the oversight committees would be, if a state agency wants to change the rules for the citizens, right? Because they're an appointed bureaucrat that gets to make the rules. they would have to go in front of the oversight committee and say, we want to change this rule, and what I'm saying. We're going to let our people work from home. The legislature can say, no, you're not, because we were voted in as your voice. The appointed director was appointed, so I do feel, and nothing, it's a process, but I still think there should be oversight on the directors from the legislation, because if a director makes a rule or a guideline in their department, you as citizens have to follow that, right?
Right.
But they didn't elect that guy to make those rules. They elected us to make those rules and make sure they're protected. And if they make a rule, we got to go change the law, and it takes a year for them to change what we don't want them to do. And it should be just the opposite. They should come to us and say, yes, you can do that, because we have to fight our state agencies to change things when that we were elected to represent you, not to fight our state agencies. I feel that's just a way to get the voice back to us and say, yeah, we elected you to do this. Don't let that happen. So.
Can you update us on the bills that you put in for helping out the local counties with funds received from the sale of the timber and things?
That is my one of your passions. This is probably the most passionate thing I have. I mean, all my bills I think are decent, and they help our constituents or help the citizens. I mean, it's always, I use my experience as a law enforcement and things like that. But my 2 years up there, I've been working with the agencies, and I noticed that there's state agencies that profit or take revenue from natural resources in the state. And being in a rural area where a lot of our land is owned by state or governmental officials, we don't have the ability to prosper. And I truly feel owning land is an economic stimulus for an area.
Sure.
Because you can buy 500 acres and you can build a home on it, and the property values go up, so it helps pay the essential costs. The schools get more money. So as I was up there, I noticed in the last 2 years that there's a state agency that actually last year sold their portion of natural resources, made $6 million off of our natural resources in our rural areas or on the property that the state owns, but they claim managerial oversight on. I've tried working with them on different occasions about giving that back to the community, giving it back to our logging industry, because one of them is timber sales. Last year, this department made estimated $6 million that they put in their general revenue off of timber sales throughout the state. And in 3 years in the past, I think it was 18, 19, and 20, or it was 19, 20, and 21, they took approximately $2 million worth of timber out of Shannon County and did not give that money back to them proportionately. They'll tell you the Peck Ranch and all this stuff, but that's additional to what they made. In Shannon County's budget, what would that do for them if they give a portion of that back to them to help?
Oh, sure.
So I truly feel that natural resource does not belong to any state agency. It belongs to the citizens of the state or the county in which it was received. For instance, Indian Trails up here had the state's portion was $173,000 they took and put in their coffers. I asked them where they do. They can't tell me because they just put it in their general revenue. So my bill would say that no state agency can profit or take revenue from our natural resources, dirt, mining, or timber sales, or anything that they make profit off of a natural resource would have to come back to the county. 25% of that would go to the state agency for administrative costs, because I understand it costs money to do that. 25% would go to the school district in which it was taken, and 50% would go right back to the county so they could pave the roads or go back into the county, right? I think that's local control, and it puts our rural areas where most of these natural resources are taken, and most of them are economically depressed. They don't have the capabilities to have all this stuff because they have the land.
Well, they're not getting the tax money because the state owns it.
Well, and we can go there. Yeah. Indian Trails was, I don't know if you know this, but if any property obtained before 1977, they pay no property tax on. And so Indian Trails when they got the property they got before 77, they pay nothing on. Now, there are properties around it that they obtained afterwards that they pay property tax on. So,
But it's still not the same amount we do.
but R4 school district, and I'm showing my passion. I don't want my voice to raise, but if my bill they have to pick up the essential costs because they don't pay property tax.
Right.
And if that 173,000, if this bill or law would have been in effect, then R4 would have got $45,000 for their school district, right? To help compensate for the lack of taxes and the resources taken out. So it's a passion of mine because I think it's only fair. And I don't think any state agency should profit from, the patrol didn't get money from writing a ticket. They don't get money for their job that they're supposed to do. I just felt that it should be given back to the community, and that's what HJR 61, and that's a House Joint Resolution. That has to be voted on by the people. I mean, so, and here we go, 13 counties voted Amendment 3 in, they had the vote. So that's what I'm fighting on. Our rural areas would be glad to see this because they think that natural resources is in their community. That money should be coming back to their community. So, and that's a passion of mine. And I'll get a lot of kickback from that because they want to keep the money. Who wouldn't want to keep the $6 million? I don't know what they're allotted to this year, but this agency just got 5,600 acres in Carter County that they'll log, and Carter County will be out all that money.
Well, they've got 2 sales coming up for over 5 million in board feet of timber.
Yeah, 15 million board feet. Last year, I was told by the forestry industry was roughly a $6 million port for the state agency.
Wow.
So 5 million, if there's 2 of them, that's 10. You're talking
There's
probably
that's 2 together just in our area. That'll be over 5
And
million.
I would love for this to pass before, in the next election, because then that money could come back to the counties. But it's a fight. I mean, it's a passion. I think it's only fair. I'm not poking any agency. I just feel that people need to realize that your state agency should not be profiting from the natural resources. The federal government gives rural schools money for mining and forestry. I mean, that's kind of where this comes from. The feds, even the land that they do when they log it, they give a portion of that back to the county. The state agency does nothing. I mean, they'll tell you they give road money they give $12,000 to Dent County for gravel.
In their area.
Yeah, and then they give books
yeah.
to the schools. I mean, this is what they tell me. I mean, so, I mean, I just want proportionately back to the county and the people that I represent. So.
Well, they basically pay for the gravel. They don't pay for the machinery or
Well, I mean, and some of them, I'm not holding against them. They do a good job what their mission is, but I think they've got outside the scope of their mission by profiting from our natural resources. Right. I mean, and that's where this has come from.
Any new bills or anything that you know of that's coming up that might be of interest?
There's some transgender bills. I know that's controversial in some ways about hormone treatment and surgery before 18. I think I was on a committee on that this past year and listened to that. I mean, I'm sympathetic. The one thing that I was in the committee, and I'll just tell you, somebody got in there, the parent said that when their 21-month-old boy come and told them they were a girl. I don't know how a 21-month-old would know the difference between a boy and a girl unless they were groomed or told, put that thing. So, and I'm not going down that path. It was just discouraging to me that a 21-month-old would say that and the parents start pushing them towards that issue when really they don't, that's that age, they don't have no clue, boy, girl, or whatnot. So, I mean, I think that's going to pass. I think that you should, if they want to make that transgender age after 18, you're an adult. That's fine. Before that time, treat them however they mentally or psychologically to make sure they're okay. We don't want kids committing suicide because of their thought process. I mean, that's the issue in that thing. They say they commit suicide enormously amount when they go through that transition stage. I mean, I don't know. I've never been there, but that's one of the issues that's coming up, and it's sad to see kids in that not knowing. I can't even fathom thinking about that. So, but that's the one thing that's going through. But otherwise, we'll just have to see for the next session what's coming on, and that's the basic things we talked about. I can tell you some of the things I've been doing. I've had a lot of visitors at Capitol. Had some honors students from Salem come up last week and visit the Capitol, and some kids from Bourbon, art class from Bourbon came up. Our 3 schools, 7th grade's coming up next week to visit the Capitol. I'm more than happy to have groups come up to the Capitol and show them around and give them a tour. You know, the Capitol is an amazing building. It's your building, and it's different from the last 2 years. COVID, you're starting to see people in the Capitol, but it is a good learning experience. Good deal.
As you've had some time off here, and you were telling me before we came on, you've had a chance to check out some different types of entities that are affected by taxes and things of that nature that you were totally unaware, really, of all the requirements and things that they actually do for our community.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'll start with that. Last night I went to the Dent County Health Department. Zach Mosier, I was talking to him about some issues. I talked to him about 2 weeks ago. I had a concern about some tick bites, and made a commitment and went to tour this facility. And, you know, I was very naive about what our Dent County Health Department did. You know, we get the stereotypical thing about our health departments, but it's amazing. They do just about anything else. A doctor, they got a nurse practitioner, they got a mini pharmacy, they give shots. You know, they've got a daycare program that they help provide for daycare. You know, they got a grant money for that, which I was just amazed about what they give to the community and what they do. You know, we get typical about our health departments in a certain area, but I truly think they do from what I saw yesterday and being on the board meeting, they do a very good job of servicing a need in our community that is needed by certain groups of people. I mean, I could go to the health department and get serviced, which that surprised me. I thought it was for a different type of income area of people, but no, anybody can do that, which I was really surprised. And they keep good statistics. The board had a real good meeting. I saw what they did, and they're a good asset for our community.
Right. And I know you also visit with the school districts around, and I think you had a chance to even visit a little bit with the city to find out a little bit more what.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we all know the EPA sends down edicts, and they're not recommendations, they're edicts. You will do this, and then that goes through our Department of Natural Resources statewide, and then they put the burden onto the cities, counties, whatever it might be, to enforce those things and get them done. I will say with the ARPA funds and CARE money that the state has allowed some grants to be issued to help with this situation, but you know, it makes it very difficult. Small communities have a difficult time in trying to get these things done because there's not the tax base, number one, and then number two, the cost of it is just incredibly high for a small community to cover.
Oh, yeah.
And Salem is coming up with one of those issues right now, aren't they?
Yeah, you know, I talked to Salem about a lot of their issues that, you know, people call me and ask me, and I let them decide on things. I think Salem officials have been given a slate that they're trying to fix. I think this is the way it looks, and I'm not bashing on anybody in the past, but some things hadn't been fixed in the past that's caught up to the city, and it seems like the people now are having to pay for that, and which is sad. But I think the officials there, they have a plan, and they showed me their plan. I think it's a good plan to move forward to try to fix the problem and bring Salem to the point where they're sustainable, have good people, have good service. And like I said earlier, you know, we have a comfort level of what we expect on sewer, trash, roads, our police. If these things that they're bringing forward, like the bond issue and the tax, doesn't pass, you know, we may have to give up some of our comforts or some of our expectations of the city. But it's not, I don't think it's their fault they got here. It's some of the freeze that happened in 2021, that the electric went up, and the lack of gradual increases to some of the rates through the years really got them in a hole, and now they have to fix it. And I think their plan goes pretty good about fixing that. I'm not a big tax guy, but I don't know how they're going to fix it without getting that 1 cent tax, you know. And then the bond issue, what they talked about, it makes a lot of sense. They got the grant for the bond, and if the bond passes, the rates will be so much cheaper.
Oh, yeah.
If it doesn't pass, they'll be higher because there's grants out there and money that can be had.
It's conditional upon.
It is.
Approval,
I mean, it's conditional on the bond passing, and you don't want to force anybody or twist their arm. But it really made sense that, you know, if I want to pay $3 or $4 extra a month or 15, you know, I mean, so it's nobody wants to pay more, but you're going to pay more no matter what happens because, like you said, the edicts that come down. And the things I talk to the city about are are they mandating that you don't think you need? Because if I can work on that with DNR, can we postpone that and fix what we necessity and give us years down the road to fix some other things? That's kind of why I was in that meeting, to find out what maybe I can hold off DNR, what things are immediate that we have to fix. Because if we don't have the money to fix it, how do we fix it? What are they going to do? Sue us? I mean, how?
Unfortunately, they do fine you.
But then how? If you don't have the money to fix that, it's an issue.
No, that's why I said you're going to either put a small town out of business, and when they start talking like $25,000 per day, fine. I said, where are you going to get the money?
Yeah, but I mean, that's just it. We can't have the money to fix it. Why are you going to fine us? It don't make sense.
Yeah, none of that makes any sense. And one of the things, I think COVID really, for a lot of small communities, because normally you can make little small changes, little small raises here and there, and you can cover everything and keep what I kind of call consistent flow going. Once COVID hit and everything had to shut down, you really, when it finally got back to normal, you're a year and a half behind. And all of a sudden you've got to make a lot of decisions and a lot of adjustments. And, people through COVID, they didn't have any late charges, they didn't have any shutoffs, they didn't have anything. And all of a sudden, bang, it has to go back to normal sometime, guys. Yeah. And when it does, it kind of I don't know if it caught people off guard or if they just didn't think it would ever happen. Kind of like and talk with the hospital when they did the Medicare advancement. They all thought, well, oh no, we're not going to ever have to pay that back. Wrong. Medicare wanted the money back, and so they gave you 18 months to pay it back, and then they started putting penalties. Our Salem Hospital got all paid off on time, so they didn't have to pay any penalties. But can you imagine if you were a large hospital and got, say, $75 million, and you think it's going to get wiped off like ARPA funds and CARE, and all of a sudden they're saying, by the way, guys, 50% of all that money comes back to us, and now if you don't get this paid, we're going to start charging you interest and penalties. Yeah. Whoa, I mean, and you saw a lot of hospitals actually in the state of Missouri shut down for that very reason. There's no way they can pay it back. So it's a little bit scary when some of these things happen, and then the government tries to fix it, and initially it does a good job, but in the long run, it's going to hurt.
I'm with you.
So anyway.
Also visited Bourbon High School, did a tour with them up there just to kind of see, since that's my new area. I knew Kyle Gibbs, we used to be in Salem and Viburnum, and he gave me the tour of the middle school in Bourbon up there, and they're good schools. And I met with the Economic Development Group in Bourbon, met 10 or 12 business owners up there and seeing what they're doing up there. It's kind of, don't keep it just in Salem. I'm trying to represent the whole district and trying to get out there and do that. So.
Well, and Crawford County's new to you now because you were going the other way. You're heading south, and now you got to go north. And,
yeah, you're right. But it's all good. I mean, I get a lot of calls from Salem or Shannon County and Oregon still, because they still call me, and I still try to take care of them issues because I hated losing them, but I'll just represent all of them now instead of just the ones I got.
Well, you kind of feel akin to it. If you started on something there, you don't want to just let it go.
You're right.
So you don't want to finish it up. Do want to, Ron's going to be gracious enough as we start doing Tiger baseball and some softball games that we're going to be giving away some nice little warm comforts because, right now,
hold it up?
I can, and it's in a bag, and I just have to open
it's a little stadium blanket, and I felt that, it's a good little stadium blanket, and figured that it would be a good way to give back to the community.
Sure. And anyway, it's a blanket. I'm not going to unwrap it with a Tiger logo on it. And we're going to help Ron distribute some of these, and we'll be telling people how they can do that. Yeah. And Ron, we really thank you for that. I think if it would be this weekend, they'd need a lot of those stadiums.
Yeah, that's true. But hey, they can always use it for the next years to come.
Well, baseball, it gets pretty cool out there in the afternoon, and if the sun goes down, it's still March and April. Gets a little bit cool out there, and I know people it might not just be for baseball and softball. You got kids running track, tennis. You're out there watching tennis. It gets a little cool out there too, So
we're planning at limited quantities now, but hopefully we can work out something else.
Sure.
And it's just a way to give back, and Stan's gracious enough to give them away at the ball games and let people know that I'm wanting to help out in the community.
So we'll be telling people how they can get one of these nice stadium blankets here, and we'll be starting on Baseball Monday down at Steelville, and so we'll be putting something together and then letting people know how they can sign up to get one of these nice blankets. And we'll start also probably put that blanket out on our stream games that we have for Salem, for the softball and baseball, so they can actually get a look at the whole blanket.
Yeah,
See,
there you go.
Get a good thing. But anyway, Ron, we want to thank you for coming in and spending some time with us and going through a lot of detail on these bills. I know a lot of people don't get that kind of detail and don't know where they stand, and sometimes you can give that underlying issue as to why this is slowing down or speeding up, or maybe just give somebody a little bit more clarification on what is holding the bill up.
And lots of times we don't realize that there's 1,100 plus bills filed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them won't get referred, and you get frustrated because it's a good bill. Just like my natural resource bill, I'm trying to get that referred. There may be people behind the scenes not wanting that referred. I mean, so it's a process that I've got to work through, and it's not just, I'm not saying it's always fair, but it's a process to get it heard. And I was told it would get heard. Now, last year, some of my bills didn't get heard. My speed limit bill hasn't been referred.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty simple bill, but I don't know why he's not referring that. I mean, there's a process and a pecking order, and you just got to work through that. And but just because it's filed doesn't mean it's going nowhere.
Right.
So usually when you watch them things, if they go through committee, and you get on house.mo.gov and look at legislation, and you can click on the bill and it'll tell where it's at in the process, if it's referred, if it's in the committee, or if it's whatnot. So you kind of have an idea if it's even gone anywhere. So.
How much did you learn your first 2 years? I mean, honestly, if you went in there and you were not totally naive of state government. I mean,
Oh, no, I was on our Troopers Association
Sure.
board and dealt with the legislature on numerous issues. But just in knowing the process is difficult. The first bill that I filed, I sent it to the speaker, but I didn't realize I had to write a letter to ask him to refer it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it sat there for 2 weeks before I even knew that, right? So then I found out you have to ask the committee chair, would you hear it, right? So it's not just submitting something and saying, hey, it's going to go forward. You have to go lobby the speaker, you got to lobby the committee members, the committee chair, and then if your bill does get in committee, it's good for you to lobby or to talk to the people on the committee so they understand what it is, instead of, so it is a process and it is a job, in a roundabout way. So I've learned a lot. I mean, and the relationship building, like I told somebody yesterday, is one of the biggest things you have
Right.
up there. I told somebody I can go ask my mom and dad for $10,000, and well, if they have it, they'd be glad to give it
Sure.
to me. But you meet somebody on the street and ask them for $5, they're going to say no. So just getting relationships with other representatives, with the leadership in the House and the Senate. Senate's a big thing. Just them knowing you, it goes a long way. This past summer I had senators actually calling me by my first name, which was a feat in and of its own, because
Sure.
now they know me. Lieutenant Governor, I have a relationship with him, and Secretary of State, they know who I am. So that's the biggest part. Once you get that process going, you can move things forward. But I've learned a lot. I mean, we talked about this in the past about term limits. I don't want to be a career politician. I'm blessed. I think that the district's blessed because I am retired, because this is my job.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to go do another job to support my family.
Right.
So that is a blessing for me, because I don't know how I could do this job and I couldn't be here today. I'd be
Right.
working somewhere else. So it is a blessing that I was able to do this and get out and do that. So, and some people can't do that, but it is a full-time job for me.
So well, we hope people enjoyed this. This
Yep.
first of what we think are going to be many podcasts for you, a video podcast, and we're kind of calling it that. And of course, we want people to comment on it. They can comment to you personally, and of course, they can always let us know. And I think anybody who's been watching can send it an email to us, and they've been viewing it on the screen. But we'll let people know how they can get in touch with us, and the next time we get together, they may have some questions for you.
But that'll work. I mean, I think I want to try to do this as much as I can. Start off and see how it goes. And I think information flow is knowledge. And watching the news, you don't know I always wonder if that's true or not. I have to go look at it. I see something on Facebook that says there's a rhino in the House doing this, and I'm thinking, I don't know where this is at. And you look at it, and it's a Democrat. I'm not being mean. I'm not
Right.
a Democrat, but it's a Democrat filing to take away SAPA. Well, that's normal. That's not a rhino.
Right.
That's they believe that that's what it should be, right?
Yeah.
But the information on Facebook saying, hey, this rhino in the House is trying to kill SAPA, which is the Second Amendment Preservation Act,
Right.
when it's really a Democrat that was opposed to it in the first place. But they used the word rhino to get the stimulant. They use rhino for everything anymore, and it's kind of frustrating because you have to look into what you see on the internet. Email my office, email whatever, and ask, and I'll clarify it. You may not like the clarification because it's true. I mean, I'll lose a lot of votes. I think I lost votes in the House, in my office the other day, because I said I can't support that to a subject. I said because it's exorbitant amount of money that you're wanting for a pay raise. I mean, it was just, I don't want to poke fingers, but they needed a pay raise, but they was wanting $90,000 for an elected official. And I said, I just can't support that. I mean, I think you need to be paid for what you do, not just a generic across the board. And I hope I didn't lose that. I was just being honest. But if I lose it, it's because I'm being honest.
I'd rather you be honest.
Well, I just can't.
So-
It's not. This job's not worth losing my credibility and my ethics over it.
Well, that's just it. If you're telling me something today, and I don't believe you, and then you come back next week, and you tell me a whole different story, and then the next week is a whole different story, I'm not gonna believe anything you say.
Well, I got a Facebook post yesterday that said, "Hey, you told me you voted no for this, but the Sullivan paper has me say that I supported it." So I have to call the Sullivan paper and say, you're misquoted me. I did not support this open enrollment bill. They say I supported the open enrollment bill, and I don't know where they got that. So now I'm going to have to fight the Sullivan paper and everybody over in the Sullivan area that saw that. I've been telling them, they know I voted no. That's why they sent this to me. They said, hey, you voted, the paper says you supported this legislation. I said, so now how do I fight that? Their distribution.
They have a record of your vote.
Well, I know, but I don't know
online.
how they got me as supporting it. I mean,
No, I meant they have a record of your vote online. You can go see.
Well,
how
I
you
know
vote
that,
on
but
every
now I
bill.
have everybody who doesn't go look into that.
I see.
Looks, oh, look, he supported open enrollment because they won't go look at my vote.
Yeah, well, they need to run a retraction.
Well, I'm gonna call them today and ask
First
them
it'll be on
where-
page 28 on the bottom.
I want it on the first page in bold, right?
Yeah, it's not going to be.
And really, all actuality, the people that know me know that I voted no, and it may be good for some people. May love open enrollment. Say, oh, I love him now, but
Yeah.
but I don't want them to like me for something that I didn't do.
Yeah.
So misinformation.
Yeah.
So I
Very
appreciate everybody listening and watching, and hopefully next time, I'll bring more information. If you have questions, I'll try to answer them the best I can. I appreciate Stan's filling in for me and asking me the questions. I think it gets the good information out, and I think it's what people want to hear.
Well, we're thrilled to have you here and getting like I say, the information you don't get in the newspaper, that you don't get on the radio or even on the statewide reports. There's no way anybody could get that kind of information unless they're talking to the source. And
I agree.
We really do appreciate you coming in and being able to explain that to our listeners and our watchers. Actually, I could say viewers, but I said watchers. That's okay.
That's all right.
But we're good to go with it. And we look forward to the next one.
Yep.
And hopefully we'll get some response from people that would like to have a few of their questions answered, that you can address those
That'll work.
in our next podcast.
Appreciate it. Thanks,
All right.
Stan, and thanks everybody for listening or watching.
Thank you, Ron. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
Your